In studio with us, we have Timothy Alberino. How you doing, Tim?
Doing good.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you back. We're talking about True Legends, Holocaust of Giants. We're talking about the 2017 True Legends Conference and the 2018 one. You said something, and if people didn't get a chance to check out last week's web exclusive, make sure to do that at youtube.com/SkywatchTV_official, or you can find it on Roku or your mobile app, which if you have an Android or Apple, you can get it on any device. You said something that really resonated with me, because this is how I try to handle basically anything we do here too. Is that if you have a view on something, or even if you're not sure and your true pursuit is truth, you shouldn't be afraid to hear other points of view, to invite in other points of view. And I thought that was really profound, because it's true. I remember back a few years ago when I was still totally 100% Baptist, and I'm not saying anything bad about the Baptists, they're great people, but I was 100% Baptist, 100% just really staunch on a lot of super traditional Southern Baptist doctrines. And I could have just stayed in that, but that's what I grew up with. That would have been kind of like my 7-8-year-old theology, I could have stayed in that, and I don't think that I would have grown spiritually or even really mentally much if I'd done that. One thing that God showed me was when you set your pride aside and you're able to hear somebody else out and not get personally offended by it, but just hear their point of view. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But it's actually a really good opportunity for not only you to witness to the person, but for you to examine your own beliefs. It's kind of like, in Scripture it says, come, let us reason together. It doesn't say, come, let us fight and argue and all that stuff. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because I thought that was I think that's a really good approach. And for those who might have missed last week, the whole context of that comment was, in this 2018 upcoming True Legends Conference, you guys are planning on bringing some maybe controversial types of guests. We'll say
Yes.
they're non-Christian, some of them.
We're definitely trying to secure some controversial guests.
Well, tell us some. I know you can't really give specific names yet, but tell us some about what you're trying to go for with that.
Well, what I mean when I say a controversial guest is somebody that's coming from a secular worldview, but not just any person. We're looking for, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking for the people who are leading figures in the transhumanist movement, or in the world of artificial intelligence, robotics, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because the theme of this one is
Transhumanism in the hybrid age.
Yes.
Is the theme of this conference. And so that excites us, because these are the people who are in the know. They're on the cutting edge of this technology. We acknowledge, obviously, the developmental progression of these technologies and the impact that they're going to have on society and are having on society.
Yeah.
But we come from a different view in terms of the ultimate implications, because we come from a biblical view, and especially as it pertains to genetics, because it's the world, the old world, the world that existed in the pre-flood time, the antediluvian world, was destroyed precisely because all flesh became corrupted.
Right.
Through the miscegenation of the Watchers and their offspring.
And a lot of people, when they see the word corrupted, they think it's a moral corruption. But when you go into the Hebrew, there's reason to believe it doesn't end there. It could also be genetic.
Yes, it was genetic. And so, yes, there were, in terms of the what led to the flood, there were all kinds of moral issues that were going on, all kinds of sinful practices. The people were thinking evil continuously. Men were continuously formulating wicked thoughts in their minds and acting upon those wicked thoughts. That's evident.
Yeah.
What's also evident, but perhaps not as clear to the average Bible student, is the genetic undertones that can be found in the same passages.
Right.
The corruption of all flesh. Obviously, animals weren't thinking evil continuously.
Right.
So, but yet they were corrupted. The slate had to be washed clean, and I'm sure the vast majority of your audience is very familiar with the Genesis 6 affair.
Sure.
And everything that is implicated in that. So the point is that the leading scientists, the leading futurists, the leading transhumanists of our time are declaring that the human race, the human species, is about, that we are collectively about to enter what they're calling the hybrid age. But that's not entirely true. What we are entering is not the hybrid age. What we're entering is a new hybrid age.
Oh, okay.
It is a repetition. It is a resurrection, a reinstitution, if you will, of what existed in the world before the flood of Noah, in terms of the genetic situation of all flesh being corrupted, and the genetic implications are very similar. So we're entering into a new hybrid age, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, and we are very interested at Gen 6 Productions and in the True Legends conference coming up to have, as I said, the leading figures in these fields, the leading minds who are actually developing the technology,
right,
or are actually consulting with the companies that are developing the technology. We deal in the real. It's better, rather than just to speculate behind the scenes, we'd rather invite these individuals and have an open dialogue. And again, we're not afraid of opposing opinions.
I love that. And I like it, too, how you're handling it, because you're not telling your audience what to think. You're giving them the information that's out there by bringing these people in, and then people can make up their own minds about it. And, you know, I mean, if you think of it in terms of a debate, when you're going to debate somebody, you want to know all of their points, everything they might say. You want to be as familiar as you can with the opposing point of view just as well as your own, so you can counteract anything that they might say. Well, I think that's the same. It should be the same with our theology and our belief system as a whole. You know, if we think of the outside world as our opposition, and I don't even necessarily mean enemy. We have an enemy that's spiritual in nature, but I think, you know, people in the world who haven't come to Christ yet are more prisoners of war than enemies. But just thinking of the opposing viewpoints, we should want to know what their viewpoint is, what led them to believe the way that they do, what led them to think transhumanism is the answer, you know, instead of the cross. And maybe it's just which often it is, a fundamental misunderstanding of what the cross is all about. So, I mean, that also provides a good opportunity for witnessing for some of these speakers, possibly.
Yeah, well, I know that Tom's work over the years, because Tom's been leading the charge on our end of the spectrum in terms of transhumanism, in terms of all of these things. He's written some seminal books on the subject. And Tom's work has been very influential, I believe, in the secular world, even among some of these individuals who are leading in their fields, or who are influential in their fields. And I have no doubt, in fact, I know that to be true, as a matter of fact. And so, yes, that's exciting for us. Why can't we influence
exactly
those realms instead of just sit back and observe, be passive observers? So that's what excites us, and that's where we're really headed with the True Legends Conference. And in 2018, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be better, it's going to be bolder, it's going to be more epic. And a lot of people came up to me and told me at the conference and then afterwards, and Steve and Tom have said the exact same thing, that was the best conference they had ever attended. And I believe it's because of the atmosphere. And we didn't make the atmosphere. We helped set the atmosphere, but it's the people who came that created that atmosphere. Just an absolutely wonderful group of people who were there. And they were excited, they were charged up, they were ready to receive, they were ready to hear what the speakers had to deliver, and the speakers delivered. Every one of them. So, and that's why I encourage everybody to get the DVD package from the conference.
And I want to bring that up. So this is the 2017 True Legends, the conference. This is all the DVDs, because we've been people have been writing in to us too, asking if we're going to make these available, and absolutely yes, they're at the store, and we'll tell you how you can get a hold of that in just a second. But so this is all the speakers. This is
every speaker, every session is represented in that DVD package.
And what an amazing list! You have Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, Ellie Marzulli, yourself.
Anselm P.
Thank you. You knew it. I was going to butcher his name if I tried. David Langford, Derek Gilbert, Dr. Michael Lake, and Henry Groover. Amazing lineup. And I mean, when you just get the actual case, the quality of it looks phenomenal. Well, I don't want to waste any more time. I want to tell you at home how you can get a hold of this as well as some other things. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about Sardinia, more about Holocaust of Giants. We're going to talk more about that and the rite of incubation. So stay tuned right after this. True Legends, the conference. We talked about some of these DVDs. This was from 2017, going on into 2018. Once again, for people just joining us, the 2018. How can they, if they want, can they get tickets now?
Yes, they can go to gen6.com, GNSIX.com. They can register for the conference right now.
And it's a good idea to do that early,
They should
right?
do it right away because last year we had a lot of people who, excuse me, we had a lot of people who wanted to be at the conference. And figured that they have plenty of time. They'll register later. They wanted to wait until the summer to actually go and sign up for the conference. And when they went to sign up for the conference, figuring we're 2 months out, there's still going to be space, they were devastated to find out that it was sold out. In fact, it had been sold out for a month or two before they even went to register. The thing sold out in 3 months.
Wow, and that's a huge venue, too.
Yeah, it's a massive venue, and the conference sold out in 3 months, and we're expecting it to sell out in 3 months again.
Wow.
And perhaps even faster this time. So if you want to be at the conference, you have got to register as soon as possible.
Yes.
On gen6.com. And
it'll be in Branson, Missouri.
It's going to be in
at the
Branson,
Mansion.
Missouri, 2018, the Mansion Theater.
Seats like what, 3,000 to 5,000, somewhere around there?
Somewhere in there, and it's really September 14th through the 16th. The 13th is the registration day.
Okay.
So it's during that period of time there, that weekend, and it's going to be epic. It's going to be phenomenal.
Well, I'm excited about it. So to kind of change gears, go to check out some of this stuff about Holocaust of the Giants. Last week we talked about a lot. We talked about the Four Corners area. We talked about the Smithsonian Gate, and we talked a little bit about Sardinia. You were talking about the Nuragic towers, or is it Nuragi? What's the proper?
The Nuragic civilization, the towers are called Nuragi.
Okay.
And if you call them anything else in Sardinia, the people don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
It took me a long time to understand what the heck a Nurage was. And it's the towers. They're the megalithic towers.
Oh, okay.
And the tombs are actually called the tombs of the giants.
And are the tombs like under these towers?
The tombs are associated with the towers.
Oh, all right.
So usually when you find a tower, you're going to find some tombs. Or there was at one time some tombs in the vicinity.
Is there anything left in the tombs? Are there any bones
Well,
left?
not anymore. Well, possibly.
Okay.
But according to many of the residents in Sardinia who we talked to, there were giants in the tombs. And 9, 10, 11-foot tall giants were in the tombs. Post-flood Canaanitish giants. And, however, there are several different kinds, at least 2 different kinds of tombs on the island. And one of the tombs is a smaller tomb that has a little tiny doorway, not really big enough for anything but maybe a toddler to squeeze into. Those are on the island. But then there's a larger version. Both of these versions are shaped in the form of a bull's head.
Oh, interesting.
Which is very interesting, considering that we're talking about Phoenician Canaanite culture, a Canaanitish culture. So we're talking about Molech, Baal, the whole Canaanitish cult of Baal worship and the worship of Molech, who had a bull's head.
That even gets into child sacrifice. And
It
stuff
does.
Like that.
It does. The passing the children through the fire to this day, in certain sectors of Sardinia, they still practice, or at least they used to in the 19th century, leaping through the flames of the fire, which is reminiscent, which is harkens back to the Canaanitish, the Canaanite practice of offering up their children, their babies, to the god Molech, which was a very gruesome sacrifice because this was a searing idol, life-size idol, and they would literally put the babies on this like a searing pan, basically, and then they would go into the belly, which was a furnace of the idol. So that the rudiments, or I should say the leftovers of those kinds of practices, of course, excluding the actual sacrifice, can still be found to this day in Sardinian culture, or at least looking back 100 years ago. Certainly the evidence is still there that it was a Canaanitish culture. The people, in fact, there were some genetic tests done, and they have determined that most of the people, the root populace of this Sardinia, the original Sardinian genetic stock is Phoenician. The tombs of the giants are all over the place on the island, especially you can see the two different kinds I mentioned. You can see the remains, the ruinous remains of the tombs all over the island. Many of them have been disassembled, but you can still see where a tomb might have been on the island, all over the place. There's thousands of them. And so the smaller kind, probably there were bodies inside of them, but the larger ones, we don't believe, and neither do some of the locals, the professionals there who I spoke with, informed us that the larger tombs were not necessarily designed to put a body inside.
Okay.
The larger tombs were designed for the body to be buried beneath. And
okay.
the tomb itself, the chamber, was devised for a rite of passage ceremony.
Is this the rite of incubation?
Called the rite of incubation, in which the young people would go into the tomb, and we go in these tombs in the film. We go into the tomb, and the purpose would be, they probably would have been sealed in there for a number of days, and the whole purpose would be to communicate with the entity, with the Gibberine, the mighty one, buried beneath the tomb, in order to absorb the prowess of that entity, in order to commune with it, and perhaps even be possessed to some degree by the spirit of that entity, or infused with the spirit of that entity. And that is called the rite of incubation.
Wow.
And was practiced by the Neurologic civilization, the Neurologic culture, which again we believe was Canaanitish, the Phoenicians.
It's really interesting. That sort of sounds like this new wave of what's called grave sucking now, where, you know, supposed Christians will go and lay on the graves of past, you know, prophets or Christian leaders or whatever, and try to. Is it similar to that?
No, well, in some ways. That's certainly Canaanitish. And it borders on necromancy.
Yeah.
The desire to communicate with the dead is strictly prohibited in the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not because it's a fanciful magic, but because it has real world implications in terms of the ramifications of what could happen, because there are entities, spirits, that are looking for an opportunity to influence your life or even to inhabit you. And I certainly would not advise anybody to ever engage in an attempted communication with a dead soul, whether it be trying to absorb their spirit, their anointing, or to communicate with them on any level, because you're entering into a realm of necromancy.
Right.
And there are entities that are waiting in the shadows to commune with you.
So that opens the door, and then there's no guarantee what's
and I'm not sure that grave sucking opens the door for possession.
Sure.
It's just it smacks of Canaanitish necromancy to me. And certainly I find no biblical context for that practice.
Makes sense.
And it's disturbing.
So how does the Vatican connect in all this? Because you know, it seems like with all these graves and everything, there should be some bones, but have they been confiscated?
In our film, one of the most surprising things in our film is we interviewed two individuals in the film who were both hired by the municipality in Sardinia, the government in Sardinia, to excavate a nuraghe tower, and to excavate these ruins, which just so happened to be located beneath a church, the Church of Santa Anastasia, in the village of Sardara.
I'm assuming it's a Catholic church?
It's a Catholic church. I think it wasn't being used at the time, but nonetheless the ruins were beneath the church. And these two individuals at two different periods of time were employed in the excavation of this site. Both of these individuals extracted the full skeletons of giants from this one location. One extracted 2 or 3, the other extracted 3 or 4. Ranging between 9 and 10 feet tall, or 11 feet tall. And in the first gentleman's case, his name is Giuseppe. When they would extract the bones or any artifacts, they would go into the church. He built a large table inside of the church to house the artifacts. The artifacts would go into the church during the course of the day's excavations, including the full skeletons of giants, which they would put on boards, large boards, and carry them into the church and put it laid out on the table. Or random skulls, massive skulls. So we're not talking about dinosaur bones. We're not talking about mastodons. We're talking about humanoid skulls and skeletons. and then overnight, all of the artifacts would disappear. And nobody would tell them who would come and take them, and they had to be done working at a certain time. All of the artifacts would disappear. In Giuseppe's case, in the case of the other individual, Roberto, he would excavate the bones of these giants, and he would lay them out in the courtyard next to the church. And he even mentions a particular individual he calls Dr. Ugas, would come from the university in Cagliari, the capital city in Sardinia, and would come and confiscate the bones, would come and inspect them and then take them. And so they knew very well that they were going to be discovering, the people who employed these gentlemen to do the excavations, they knew full well that they would be uncovering the bones of this race of giants, among other artifacts. Because there's always gold and silver and precious artifacts related to the giants. And again, we're talking about post-flood giants here.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of speculation among the residents, the native Sardinians, especially the older native Sardinians, that it was the municipality of Sardinia. The government had something to do with it, but also the Vatican was closely associated with this activity. And this is something that we've proven. I believe we've proven in our films. In all three films, we're not looking for Vatican conspiracies. That's not what we do at Gen 6 Productions. We're never looking for a Vatican conspiracy.
Right.
We're not trying to put a spotlight on the Vatican.
Just going
everywhere we go.
Leads.
It just so happens that everywhere we go, looking for the material that we investigate, we find the Vatican presence.
What do you think the Vatican's interest is in these sites and bones and things?
Well, the answer would be very complicated to that. First of all, there aren't many people at the Vatican who know about the reality of these things. It's always going to be a small group of elite people. There's a very powerful satanic lobby, we might call it, at the Vatican, Luciferian, certainly. And there's all kinds of artifacts that have been stored away in the Vatican vaults. And very few have access to those vaults. I would be surprised if Pope Francis knew about what's in the Vatican vaults. It's like the President of the United States. He's a transitory figure.
Right.
He comes and he goes. He doesn't have the need to know.
Yeah, there are people that are going to be there long after.
He runs the political day in and day out of the Vatican. He's the king of Vatican City. He is, as well as being the Holy Father of the Roman Catholic Church. And so he's consumed with, and most of the cardinals and the staff at the Vatican are just enveloped in the day-to-day activities. But there is that group, that order within the Holy See, within Vatican City and elsewhere, that know perfectly well about the artifacts that are in the vaults and the implications, that, as I said before, the ramifications of these Canaanitish artifacts and artifacts relating to the world before the flood of Noah, and the historical impact that they would have, both in a historical sense, but then also in a prophetic sense.
Wow. That's really interesting. People will have to pick up the film to get more information on that, because unfortunately we're just about out of time. With just a few seconds left, one more time, where can people find information? Where can they register for the conference? Where
people can register for the conference at gen6.com, GENSIX.com. They can get the conference films and the True Legends Episode 3 Holocaust of Giants from the Skywatch store.
Excellent. And make sure you do that. Make sure you register early, because it is going to sell out fast. Thank you all for joining us today on Skywatch TV. Until next time, take care and God bless.